standard settings are all very important. Environmental improvement from traffic management and many, many more elements. And I want to highlight that nearly all of these are being discussed in various sessions, but I'll come back to that. House rules, you're all in listen mode right now, but there is an opportunity for you to ask questions. You can see on your top navigation bar, sort of in the middle on my screen, there is the Q&A option. Once in a while, we have someone where that doesn't work. And then we have also included an email, as you can see here, that you can use. You're very welcome to put them in as they come to your head, and we will tackle them at the end. With that, I would like to introduce Joost van Tomme, my CEO at ERTICO ITS Europe. Please, Joost, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rita. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night. Thank you for being with us so numerously. This is the third one in the row, and I'm very pleased to open this session together with the team. You will be thrilled about this new Congress that we organize in Lisbon. Give you a bit of snapshot on what we do in ERTICO ITS Europe. We are a public-private partnership, so I'm not a private company, I'm not a government, so I'm a kind of creature in the middle. Started up in '91 with the European Commission at the time and some companies and institutions to make mobility more innovative in terms of smarter, cleaner, safer, and efficiency. That's exactly what we do with all these constituencies that you see, all these partners. We are 125 today in the family, and very nice to have the team leading all of you in our partnership. Our reach is not only Europe, but also Middle East and Africa. And that is exactly what we try to do, connecting all these dots, all these elements, going from vehicles and roads, but much beyond that, including urban air mobility, for example, and playing on the European data strategy agenda, artificial intelligence, etc., etc. You will be seeing all that in the Congress, and on the next slide, you will see why you should come to the Congress, not only for as visitor, but definitely as an exhibitor or a sponsoring and speaker. It's about innovation, making it live, happening, tangible. It's about technology, new technologies as well. It's not only about ChatGPT, it's much beyond this. New ways of traffic management and traffic gestion, what we're going to discuss today. And it's also policy making. So I'm very pleased to have many people of the European institutions there, not only Commission, but much beyond, to enlighten us with their strategies and to which they exchange views. Conference sessions, you will hear from Lisa more on that. Very happy to see 100 concurrent sessions on papers and technical sessions. And obviously networking, that's why we are there. It's not a Zoom meeting, it's not a GoTo meeting, and it's not a Teams meeting. It is you and me living together live for 3 days in this great Congress. So connecting the dots like we do today with you virtually, but you're in good hands with my team, and looking forward to see you in Lisbon. Back to you, Lisa, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joost, for this great welcome. So let me give you a quick snapshot of where we are. Here, a reminder of the key pillar. The Congress is very comprehensive, as you know, with a top-notch high-level program tackling, high-level elements of the 4 topics that we have defined. The technical program, as Joost mentioned, we had tremendous submissions this year in quality, but also in quantity, over 400. And those who know our congresses know that this is the time where people are being notified on whether their contribution made it or not. We have reviews to our external reviewers and our European Program Committee filled with experts. And we have just published the preliminary program also that I will come back to in a second. Exhibitions are filling up. I will talk about that as well. And we, of course, also have demonstrations. On the next slide, you can just see a snapshot of our high-level speakers. They're coming in as we speak. We nearly have a full high-level program now with a really, really great lineup that you can be looking forward to with speakers from across EMEA. If we move forward, a quick update on demonstrations. You see here SWARCO, CTAC, and Nordic Way. SWARCO, their demos, as you can see, are helping Green Deal cities reach their environmental goals. We'll hear more about that during the Congress as well. And CTAC, they will be showcasing their autonomous and connected shuttle, and Nordic Way, that is all about harmonized deployment about sea ITS services in Europe. The next slide just gives you an idea of how important future traffic management will be at the Congress. The whole high-level program is relevant, but in particular, perhaps plenary 4. And you can see there are a number of different parts of the technical program, whether it is CIS sessions or strategic future sessions or technical papers or research papers. All of them are tackling elements of future traffic management. Quick reminder on registrations. Time is running, and we still have a little time before early bird rate ends on 17th of April. So if you haven't signed up, do it now so that you can get the early bird rate. And you can, of course, go in on the website and have a full overview of your opportunities. Here's a list of our sponsors. It's fantastic to see new sponsors and also sponsors that we have had the pleasure of having in past congresses. The next slide, you can just run through 1, 2, and 3. It gives you an overview of exhibitors, but most importantly, here is a link to the 2 areas where you can still think of having a stand. We have a floor plan linking to the ground floor and also a plan linking to the mezzanine floor. There are still a couple of stand slots available. And then, of course, last but not least, social events. Some of you may know that we have the reoccurring gala dinner on the Tuesday, and we are very happy to announce that this will take place in Sud Lisboa, which is an absolutely beautiful, stunning venue. Moving on, suffice to say that you have access to the conversation both on our social media channels. Of course, you can also sign up to our e-blast and our newsletter. And for those of you who are actively participating as sponsor or exhibitor, don't forget the promotional toolkit. These slides will be made available on our website, so you can go in and click, and it will take you directly to that promotional toolkit. And so that was it from my side, a quick update, and I am now delighted to turn over to our Chief Innovation Officer, Dr. Johanna. And Johanna, you will be leading the panel on the topic in depth, future traffic management. Over to you, Johanna.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to moderate this discussion. Those of you who know me and who know the community of TM 2.0 know how much work we have been putting on this for the past, for more than 8 years. It is a very important topic. It is, as Lisa said, very much to be discussed at the Congress as well. And the Congress is all about the game changer. And of course, traffic management is a game changer, and we are discussing about the future of traffic management. So let's go to the next slide already. We are going to hear from 5 experts. And these 5 experts I'm going to present as I'm giving the microphone to. But let me tell you, all of them are very active in the TM 2.0 ERTICO innovation platform. And this platform, this forum of public and private organizations are coming together, and they're discussing how we can move from traffic management 1.0 to the 2.0 version, which is all about collaboration and trust among the stakeholders, the public and the private, alignment of information, consistency, co-petition, where you have the priorities that all stakeholders can agree to work together, or at least they can agree to follow on different degrees of cooperation. So the TM 2.0, the interactive traffic management, the future of traffic management, it's taking into account all these developments that are taking place in CCAM, in electromobility, technologies such as AI and LiDAR, sustainability, and so on. And we are going to hear very important aspects or angles on this. If you go to the next slide, thank you very much. I wanted to show you what is the discussion now in this platform of public and private stakeholders when we are discussing about the different levels of cooperation among and between the stakeholders. And you go from level 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're progressing to more system optimal and capacity and public priorities considerations for the entire mobility network. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor indeed to our first guest, expert, to my dear friend, Dr. Laura Coconea. She is the head of Portfolio of Management ITS Division of SWARCO, and she's going to share with us important information about the role of service providers in the new traffic management ecosystem. And the floor is yours, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, it's an honor for me to be here today, and something that I kept mentioning in all our TM 2.0 gatherings over the last 10 years. Things are changing in our lives, but we are still committed to future traffic management. And what we at SWARCO are going to share today in this occasion, it's really about practical topics and on how we propose to overcome, of course, some of the challenges towards deployment of future traffic management. Because, of course, we talk about all these great things and feature level and so on, but it's really important to make it happen now. And as a basis for what we bring here today, so we will address 4 challenges, as you will see, of course, very briefly. But what we bring here today really comes as an answer to a request from our customers, because we asked them. So we conducted throughout the last years a very extensive market survey, really from our customers all over the globe, and we really took the time to talk with more than 450 of them, and we asked them, what is that actually hinders the deployment of future traffic management? And some things came across all over the place, and we selected just 4 items to briefly say how we are prepared for that as SWARCO, how we are prepared for that not only as SWARCO but also as a category, as traffic industry, when going towards future traffic management. And indeed, if we think about future traffic management or about TM 2.0, basically it's all leveraging on data exchange. So really on the capability of the systems and the solutions in place to share and process data from different systems, to connect the dots, as Joost was saying, and also to be able to create this interactive loop between the final user and the traffic management. And let's say, if we look at this perspective from an end-to-end, let's say, view, in order to be able to offer services, it all starts from data. And when we look at end-to-end solutions, we could look either from a technical point of view, if you could just go on with the 3 items. Thank you. So what we experience usually in the cities, it's a shortage of skilled resources there where we can come in place as service providers with platforms like SWARCO My City. It's really to support the outsourcing of the development of the technical interfaces, for example, then in order to be able to really focus on strategic topics. Going further, when you look at integration of data sources, it's also about the contractual interfaces. Please. And you can also have the 3 items. And here we talk about the business part, really, that's behind digitalization. So when we talk about deployment, it's not only about technical issues, but also about contractual agreements. And here we can be also the contractual aggregator in order to provide the cities a single contractual stream for procurement and for integration with all data sources. Thank you. Going further. What we noticed as well in our talks to the cities is that we have a low adoption rate behind new features and so on. And it's difficult to face disruption. And this is why, especially when we think about solutions that can be easily updated based on cloud infrastructures and so on, this is how we can support also embracing innovation. Move on, please. Then what we learned throughout the pandemics, and this emerged also in our discussions with the customers, it's really that this access from everywhere, it's not only something nice to have, but it's really important for the day-to-day business, looking at the new model of working and living, because we go towards more flexibility and so on and so on. So this is why it's really important to shift from traditional type of systems where you need a workstation and your physical computer maybe to access some feature, really to shift towards cloud infrastructure and to get this location agnostic mobility management. Going on, I have just 2 more slides. Maybe the most important thing when looking, please go on, a couple of clicks. Perfect. Feature-wise, what is really important is also to go beyond this silo domain. Because as of today, we have really this patchwork of independent systems, but we really need to go towards mobility management platforms like MyCity that build a baseline for the evolution towards future traffic management, where you have all the levels, all the features that are actually integrated all among them. So actually that was really in 6 minutes, a brief introduction from my side, and looking forward for the discussion after.
Thank you, Laura. It was great. Indeed, you did it in time. You're talking about the paradigm shift, and that is a great bridge to the next guest that we have, the next guest expert speaker. And it's Mr. Irfan Shaffi from Transport for London. He's going to talk to us about the fundamental change in the approach that you have in London. It's a paradigm change, right? So Irfan, the microphone is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I want to talk to you about paradigm change. I also want to talk to you about how we make that happen at scale in a city the size and complexity of London. So just to outline the challenge we have a population of about 9 million Londoners. And we contribute, one city, our city, contributes 20% of the UK's congestion to into the air, into air quality and everything, and delays and so on. So we also have a target of 80% of travel to be sustainable by 2041 set by our mayor, and we only control 580 kilometres. That's 5% only of London's roads. So we have to be active on those roads only. We have a fair amount of traffic signals, a good number of them strategically under UTC control. We have an awful lot of detection, 16,000 something. And we review the operation every year at about a fifth of our estate, in addition to our background work. And we have a 24/7 control center. So what I wanted to talk to you about quickly here is how we're meeting the challenges that we face, how we're going to make things better for our city, both the people who come into London to work but live outside, the people who live and work in London, and all the millions of visitors we have every year. And if we can move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So we have a surface ITS program which is going to deliver these particular separate projects. So first one is a real-time optimizer to replace our traffic control system. We have a common operational view, an incident management system. This will actually revolutionize what we can do for our city and the people who travel around it, because we're able to detect and respond to incidents much, much faster than we are now. Data and analytics is a strong piece of work for us, because in all these great engines that we're building here to increase our operational capability, we need some fuel, good quality data that is resilient and meaningful to put into those engines. The final piece of that particular program, the puzzle there, is a predictive capability so that we can carry out preemptive measures, mitigation measures, in response to any sort of incident or planned event and so on. All of this is actually built in a staged fashion. So if you can move to the next slide, I'll step through this reasonably quickly. So the first box on the previous slide explained our real-time optimizer capability. So what we're doing here is we are starting small. As I said, at the very start, how do we start to move at scale? Or we start with a very small scale. So we have Living Lab 1. So Living Lab, we created the term because it is a lab. It is a such sort of a testing ground, but is actually on the street in London in a small location. So we started that 2 years ago, and then we created Living Lab 2, which gave us more capability, brought on more a bigger testing ground. And click on, please. Living Lab 3 gave us an optimization capability within a small scale still. And Living Lab, that just carried on growing. So we have continuous releases of functionality into this environment. So what we're able to do is to massively de-risk our operation while we're deploying a London-wide new tool. And you can see there that we're moving to full migration through trials and so on. Very quickly, the next slide, please. I'm not going to go into any detail here. There's a lot of text there, but this is moving through inception to final deployment, not on a geographic scale, but on a capability scale. So agile development gave us steps in capability. Again, as I said earlier, this is a step change for us because this enables us to do better, faster for our customers. The next slide, please. This is us showing that we shouldn't be frightened to fail. So that some of the purpose of starting these trials small and scaling them up and testing capability is so we can work out if things are feasible or not. Does a project actually have a realistic chance of coming to delivery? So these are examples of projects here where we tested it out, we put it on the street in a small scale, and we worked out actually that's not going to go anywhere. So we shouldn't be afraid to fail. Failure is good because you learn from failure. I think all of this, all I wanted to say right at the very end, is that what we're trying to do here in our Directorate, Network Management and Resilience in TfL, is to ensure that the tools we have enable us to be that strong green heartbeat for London. And that's the purpose of the work that we've been doing. And I think that's my 6 minutes. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. It is. Thank you, Irfan. And thank you for presenting us this fundamental change in the approach that you have in London and how you're using modeling and the building a predictive capability. This is a great bridge to the next expert that we have presenting us on the simulation and modeling for proactive traffic management. It is my colleague, Dr. Tamara Djukic. And Tamara, the floor, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, this is very nice because my presentation starts with when we speak already of the tools. Traffic simulation is one of the tools, right, that we can use to assess and deploy them in the living labs or the other use cases on our road network. So the traffic simulation represents a digital twin of the people and the freight movement on the road network. And it's used for capturing the transport services planning and up to the level of operations of those services that we have on the road network. Now, depending on the fidelity of the models, how we capture interaction of the different road users in the network, we can have 3 levels of the traffic simulation models. We can look up at the microscopic, mesoscopic, or macroscopic level. Now, when we think of the traffic management situations, and next slide, please. So those traffic simulation models are more directed to application of the microscopic and mesoscopic level. And for example, if we start thinking of deployment of integrated traffic corridor management, today we have a significant paradigm shift on how those the deployment of interactive traffic management is done. Before, we have done in a more respond way. So we were looking up to detect the events, to verify them, and then to respond to them. So we were too late to kind of be proactive. And today, this is exactly what traffic management is doing. We are shifting in the new way of handling and addressing predicting the traffic states and also acting and making proactive response to those new states that we can proceed and avoid and mitigate the traffic congestion or long travel times around the network. So to have those, I have identified 3 key functionalities of the traffic simulation that can be deployed today. And those are, and the first one goes to the data analytics. First, the essential component for the traffic simulation tools is that they are enabling the data integration and collection from different and various sources into the traffic simulation tool. And those data are not only integrated as such, but they are also deployed at data analytics level, where we can use and check the quality of information, pre-processing of this information. It can be also the learning the patterns between the different loop sensors, for example, on the road network, Bluetooth data, and the other data sources that are used. And as such, with data analytics coupled with data integration, we can also learn a lot about the travelers' patterns on the road network to detect the event that is happening on the road network even more ahead, rather than waiting for the police report, for example, that there is a traffic accident happening on the road. And also, of course, using for the short-term prediction. So next slide, please. So when we speak about the prediction, one of the additional key functionalities of the traffic simulation tools is not to know only the traffic state as it is now at this moment, but also in the past, what happened yesterday, but they are also used today in the real time to predict the future traffic state on the road network. All these tools are coupled with very extensive AI deployment tools, and also what they help to do is how we move from the sensor, very local observations on the road network, to understand the traffic state on all road links. This enables us also not only to monitor the traffic state, but also to know the future state on those road links. And of course, these predictive states enables every traffic simulation tool to plug in different response plans that can be optimized, tailored for the future states, that can be simulated, and we can in advance proceed and foresee what are the future, the most or the best traffic management scenario to be deployed on the road network. And different KPIs can be used to evaluate those scenarios and to determine which one will be deployed. And then the next slide, please. So apart from this real-time deployment of the traffic simulation tools, The one advantage as well of the traffic simulation tools is that they can be used to evaluate and assess different traffic management plans, whether they are reflecting at the level of the infrastructural changes and the strategies in terms of the high occupancy vehicle toll lanes, for example, or they can be used for the evaluation of or creating the scenarios to implement the traffic strategies, the signal control plans as well. So no matter if we are deploying them and optimizing them for the real-time purposes, we can also use and assess the impact that we have created on the previous days or the times, etc., and to learn something from them and to enrich our knowledge database and algorithms, AI algorithms as well. And of course, there is an assessment of the demand management policies. And this is very relevant, especially today when we are testing the different charging policies, where we are evaluating the different strategies for incentives that we are giving to the citizens. So, and many more examples that can be done on the demand management level. So all these three features together coupled are one of the tools that can help a lot to the public authorities and road operators in deployment of the traffic simulation tools in traffic management. So, yeah,
indeed, thank you. Thank you, Tamara. This is great. Simulation and integrated data and data analytics. And then we are going to be discussing the impact of traffic management on sustainability with our expert from Technolution, Jop Spoelstra. He's an innovation manager. And Jop, the microphone is yours. We are looking forward to listening to this great, very interesting presentation.
Indeed, thank you very much. And indeed, thank you for inviting me to talk about, well, maybe my most favorite topic, so the relationship between ITS systems and sustainability impact. On the next slide, so Technolution approaches the ITS domain and its solutions from software solutions for traffic management centers for road management and also waterway management. And also we provide our own sensors in all kinds of micromobility sensing in urban areas and also public payment and e-ticketing. And when I was thinking about structuring this presentation, I thought about, shown on the next slide, the greenhouse gas protocol, which you might all know, in the different scopes of emissions that organizations are engaged with. So one being the direct emissions from your own assets and operations. The second being the indirect emissions from the operations and assets that are owned by you and related to your operations. And then scope 3, the emissions that are induced by your operations in assets or operations not owned by you. And I thought, just as a thought exercise, let's translate this towards the ITS domain. And bear with me here, because I try to show this with a couple of examples. One being, if you deploy an ITS system on the street, of course, scoping in the emissions that you have and the impact, sustainability impact that you have on your own system. So having a sustainable supply chain, if you're providing hardware, thinking about the energy use of the service that you're hosting your software on, stuff like that. Then going to scope 2, the direct impact of the solution that you provide, the direct impact on the modality or the specific challenge that the system that you provide is designed for. And then scope 3, maybe the golden bullet, the impact that is induced by the impact that you're providing in scope 2. So the sustainability impact that you're providing among other stakeholders around you, and therefore providing a real case for the need of Traffic Management 2.0 collaboration. On the next slide, I'll show some examples of this direct impact. So on the next click, so one example being the city of Copenhagen having a policy ambition to become carbon neutral in 2025 with a clear plan to prioritize cyclists in the city. So we started out sensing these cyclists, having real-time traffic management information, showing this information on all kinds of variable message signs in the city to guide cyclists across the city, thereby reducing their travel time in rush hour among the city, and also showing that data on an open platform to all Copenhagen citizens, showing the investment that my city is doing is actually providing me with something, and also using that data to improve the policy again. So really direct impact on a sustainable mode, promoting cycling. Another example in San Francisco, the policy plan to reduce increase safety, traffic safety in the city by promoting public transport, one of their goals. So what we did is prioritize the corridor of 3rd Street in San Francisco, simulating them and then also real-time configuring all these traffic lights, where we had a very direct impact of reducing the red time delay of these light rail vehicles across the corridor with more than 70%, and also reducing the travel time and having a minimal impact on vehicles and pedestrians, while by improving the throughput of these vehicles on specific complex intersections across this corridor, reducing the CO2 emissions by idling and acceleration by 26%. So quite a direct impact there. Then to the indirect impact on the next slide. I think a great example is the implementation of UVARs, where you'll see this is an example from on the Nordic 2 implementation in Gothenburg that we did on geofencing for zero emission zone and pedestrian zone. The main emphasis of these urban vehicle access regulations is reducing the influx of motorized vehicles, for example, or polluting vehicles, and having a very direct impact on that in reducing vehicle volumes and emissions related to that in Stockholm, for example, but also all kinds of indirect impacts that might be even more relevant in terms of sustainability outcomes. So improving road safety, having a higher use of public transport and therefore also increasing the service level of this public transport, having a modal shift towards micromobility because the safety has been improved and also it's a more attractive mode to go with. And also, for example, not even directly sustainability related, but for certain streets, the retail value of the retail stores there increased. Another impact, indirect impact, might be the impact from ITS solutions on the electricity grids. So you see one graph here on the left top part of traffic intensity on the Dutch highway. So you see the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour. And on the right side, you see a graph of the orange line where electric vehicles that arrive at the charging transaction on an office, a company area, they start their charging transaction. So you see in the morning rush hour, all these people starting to charge their car, and on the blue line you see people charging on residential areas. So you see people coming home in the evening rush hour and then starting their charging time, which has quite a direct impact on our electricity grids in relationship to all kinds of other energy transition developments going on there, which is also a solution that we provide in helping establish what will be the impact on these grids on the longer term. So summarizing, the ITS systems operations, the direct impact is on the next click, relatively easy to do because it's on your own influence sphere, but the real potential gain is relatively limited. Then again, the direct impact, the gains might be larger because you impact more people and more stakeholders. It's very challenging to measure that directly, so you're dependent on all kinds of models to make that impact tangible. It requires strong collaboration, having the case for traffic management 2.0, and in general, they do not last when the operation of these systems ends. And then, in my view, the golden bullet in this sustainability impact is this indirect impact scope. So having real huge potential gains also in real behavioral change, still very difficult to measure directly, but technology is coming up, requiring long-term and real strong collaboration between. And in general, when these operations end, the behavioral change shows that the impact of these sustainability impacts, they last longer than the operation of this system, which is, in my view, the real case for a sustainable energy transition. Thank you very much. That's it from me.
Thank you, Jop. This is great. And especially thank you for pointing out that the indirect impact is sometimes more important than the direct impact because it's longer in duration. And you were talking about safety and the model shift and yeah, the use of micromobility and so on. And this is very, very well linked to the last presentation that we are going to hear by Mr. Pedro Barradas, who is Chief Strategy Officer from Armis ITS, and he's going to be discussing resilience, resilient traffic management systems and service network. So Pedro, the microphone is yours.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So the topic of resilience, and going for the next click, please. It's sometimes a gloomy a prospect, but resilience is actually the ability to recover from a disruption. And this happens in our lives whenever we have, you know, a big problem, but it also happens in our daily lives when we move from point A to point B. So, of course, it's very interesting to try and understand what the impacts of changing conditions can bring to our transport systems. And while looking forward to traffic management and the future of traffic management, this was a very good opportunity to reflect upon what has been happening over the past years and how impacted our modes of transport and systems of transport have been subject to, and how ITS is actually coping and evolving, as well as technology is also evolving. So here in the first slides, a few examples of the things that have been really putting our networks and systems to the test. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the restrictions with the lockdowns and the social distancing have created a huge impact on our transport system. Some surreal images here from Madrid that almost look like London. Just joking, trying to check if everyone is awake after very interesting presentations before, but to making sure that you get also my points in the presentation. Of course, it's London, but it's a surreal image with an empty bridge close to the Big Ben and only 2 horses coming. It's actually a picture from 2019. When we had to go through the lockdown and also to an opportunity to claim back some public space to pedestrians and bikers, a sense of higher demand for public transport, better management, to be more flexible and adaptable to new demand patterns that were taking place all over the world through a very long period. Another example of our stress tests to our mobility systems is, of course, the fight against emissions. So there's a lot of movement and trends being made from especially cities towards the climate changing, repurposing mobility. So we do see that cities are again prioritizing more sustainable means of transportation, more sustainable practices of transport people and goods. Some of the examples already put forward by my colleagues, the low emission zones and the restrictions for the movement, and also the betting on more sustainable modes of transport, such as biking and walking. Also, 2 other examples here, a little bit more, I would say, sad in this regard, but nevertheless, again, good examples of how ITS and the transport systems are being challenged. The earthquake in Turkey that came recently, the beginning of this year. Of course, this brings to the attention the need to include real-time data analysis and have some predictive analysis on how to make mapping risking tools and identify vulnerable areas or critical corridors to make sure that the emergency response services get to their destination on time and also are able to respond and save lives, taking people to the hospitals. Another sad situation, of course, the war in Ukraine, where you can see there that we're again adapting the system. So trains no longer are supporting commuters from home to work, but actually are providing safety, shelter for people that are fleeing away from war, and actually saving lives. And also making sure that all the logistics support, food and supply chains are maintained. So it's adapting to new circumstances and new needs. And this is what we see a little bit all over the world. more often than one would expect. But these are the things that we see as challenges for this community and the future of traffic management. So simplifying in one slide, what can we expect as requirements for the resilience of systems, and how can our systems embrace change in mobility management? We see higher demands for flexibility, adapting to several mobility domains, also the ability to operate different networks and different network domains. This means applying management systems to different mobility services such as parking, motorway, public transport, and also regular traffic. A very interesting point is the ability to measure performance of the systems. We see that we really want to know and understand the impact of the measures that are being put in place in the networks and in transport systems. Also, of course, this trend for real-time data feeds and also real-time data information about disruptions. And all of this combined will help and requires the systems to be developed in the future to support decision-making with the ability to maybe simulate or forecast problem solving and helping decision makers doing the better decisions. I know I'm taking a while, so I'll try to shorten my presentation, Joanna. So I hope that when also looking into more advanced traffic management, these are, I think, the key takeaways, or the three takeaways that we envision as a community. Of course, effective traffic management with data, that's the foundation, and it will continue to be so. So acquiring data from different sources and fusing that into information. Also the use of tools as simulation, forecast, and planning. Also, there's a trend moving from advanced mobility systems, traffic management systems, to mobility management systems. So we see a higher degree of penetration in between different services, and this is a request or requirement for future traffic management. And again, the stressing the need for evaluating different scenarios, evaluating different impacts of simulating scenarios on our networks, and improving with AI and simulation capabilities, forecasting capabilities, better decision-making processes for public decisions. So next slide are, I think, the main key messages that I would like to leave. What to expect from traffic management in the future: higher demand for redundancy, higher demand for flexibility, so quick adaptation to changing conditions, robustness also. So things will have to be tested before being operated. So we expect some stress tests by simulation and using simulation in this regard. And again, key sharing information amongst the stakeholders, amongst the different services in place, and also amongst the public is key for making sure that we can all adapt and respond better to disruptions, despite the time, the duration, and the location. So final words: I expect to see you all in Lisbon. Maybe you want to know more and pass by the exhibition hall. We'll be there. Enhancement traffic management for resilient services is a must. Why? Because life happens, and we may need sometimes to reimagine mobility, even if we don't want to, but usually we do. So let's embrace change and embrace the opportunity to make a better world. Thank you for the opportunity once again, Joanne, and for taking so long.
No worries. Excellent. Thank you very much, Pedro. Indeed, let's embrace change, and let's make sure that we are ready. Let's have a discussion actually on how on the topics and the points and the angles that were presented. You see on the slide that, as Lisa also mentioned, the chat functionality has been disabled, but you can use the Q&A button, which is next to on the top of your screen, or send an email to the email address that you see on the slide. So you know me, I'm full of questions all the time, but let me start and give you some time to maybe write a question. I wanted to ask about capacity management. This is something that is we are discussing also in the TM 2.0 ERTICO Innovation Platform, and it's going to be discussed at the Congress. How do you see capacity management in the traffic management of the future? And I wanted to ask Pedro, because Pedro, you kind of took all the points and you put them under the umbrella of mobility management and the system when you were discussing about the need for to be flexible, to be robust, to be redundant, and it falls perfectly under your presentation. So let me start with you.
So I see that as a big challenge because public space is being a rare asset in our cities. We are claiming space to pedestrians, to bikes, also to have some room for pop-up events and reusing our infrastructure to have or host temporary events. We are stressing our infrastructure with refurbishing, making plans for enhancing the metro lines, making roadworks whenever we need to construct another parking lot or redesign some public transport facilities. I see this as something that will continue to be there as a trend. So I see capacity management as something that is going to be very, very challenging in the future as space gets thinner and thinner, and we want to move more and more people and more goods into the city. So I would say that, we need the collaboration between the stakeholders to better plan, to better simulate, to better prioritize, so that decision-making process can really be supported with a look or an outlook on the impacts that we are trying to reach. So I would link that also with the strategic goals of strategic urban mobility plans that need to be crystal clear from our cities on the targets that we want to meet, so that we can, facilitate a little bit our work on managing traffic to actually deliver what the city and the residents of the city and the visitors of the city actually want to get from it.
Yeah, definitely, it's linked to impact, and that's our guideline. So, yeah, let me go to Jop. And you were talking about Jop. You were talking about impact, and you mentioned the grid, and I was wondering how much, do we take into account in traffic management, or do we take now the capacity of the grid, and how much more, I'm sure you agree, we should be taking it into account in the future?
Yes, indeed. So at this moment, not too much, which is understandable. But indeed, my case being, and I'll also present that in my technical session at the Congress, is indeed we should, because with the ambitions that we have of electrical mobility, the amounts of vehicles and the size of these battery packs that will be driving around, and all the different challenges that will be impacting this grid as well. So solar generation, heat pumps in houses, stuff like that. We should be aware that if you avoid traffic peak in the morning rush hour, in the evening rush hour, you also avoid charging peak, which is a sincere problem that is growing and will be impacting urbanized areas throughout Europe in the coming years. So there's a double-sided impact coming up there, and we should be aware of that, of the influence that we have in solving those challenges as well.
Indeed. There's a question that came up. Innovation speed of smart cities at an overall level is displayed by many partners in the complex data change, developing their own way of working and own solutions. Better knowledge sharing and standardization throughout the data change would counteract this. The need for chain architecture, therefore, comes into sight at technical, procedural, and governance level. What developments in this area on EU level do you see? That is a good question. Who would like to answer that from our guests? I mean, we are talking about this in the TM 2.0 platform as well. Okay, maybe Tamara, because I know, allow me, I have inside information that Tamara is actually participating in the EGOM expert group of urban mobility forum created by the European Commission. So you have some inside information to share with us, maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry for putting you on the spot like this, but you are already on the spot.
No. I was almost ready to raise the hand as well to give a comment on the capacity question. So, and I would just to give the feedback as well there. So when we mention like management of the capacity, right? So one of the aspects that we should consider, we were focused before only on managing supply side, right, and the capacity. But I think the future direction that we should go and to address like all the issues that has been raised by the Pedro as well are the one who are dealing with more like demand management. So how we manage in coordinated and orchestrated way the demand side, and how we then use the better capacity infrastructure, not increasing capacity of infrastructure, but rather smartly and with the demand management, we can exploit better that capacity that we have today. And also with the specific policies. And I think the growth in the ITS measures that are really going in the direction of the demand management would be kind of a must for us in a very close future. So not something like in 10 years or something like that, but I have a feeling like it's for tomorrow. And I think this is the one on the answer on the capacity side to add. On the other hand, Joanna, because it was very long comment, so just the last question, if you can repeat from the partner, just to give I cannot hear you, you are muted. Sorry.
It happens to me. I'm sorry. So the last part of the question is the need for chain architecture, therefore, comes into sight at technical, procedural, and governance level. Mm-hmm. What developments in this area on EU level do you see? And it's about the better knowledge sharing and standardization throughout the data chains that will counteract the complexity of data chains and exchange among partners.
Absolutely. So one of the activities actually that we run under the EGOM, right, was recognize that to come up with better support from the national level, whether it comes to the deployment of the standards, whether it comes to deployment of architecture, because the member states, we try to collect now the data from the member states on the latest status that are the legal and governance models that are supporting deployment of such solutions. Yeah, because very often what happens in the very initiatives sometimes are run by the local authorities, by the regions, or on the federal way, but some of the more structured way and how the national the activities can be of support to this one, to have more synchronization, not only in the architecture design, but for example, in the data collection, on the reporting, on the monitoring of the progress of the different services, how close we are going with those targets related to sustainable urban and green mobility. Right? So this would be my answer, that one direction going and collecting and maybe synchronizing at the EU level, at the national level would be the way forward.
Indeed. Okay. We have a question by Joost. Joost, you are in the privileged position where you can actually turn on the microphone and ask.
Sorry. I'm not abusing this. Sorry.
No.
Thank you for the good panel discussion, for the moderation. I have one question indeed. We talk a lot about mobility data spaces, about data sharing, and this is about the whole data strategy in Europe, led by the Commission and some consortia building as well. To be honest, I see the similar issues that we have in the mass environment, mobility as a service, where we still have a lot of silos between public and private sector, not wanting to share data for all kinds of legitimate and not legitimate reasons. So there is no real level playing field in terms of co-creation, however name you give it, intelligence building through cooperative data sharing. And I see a bit of the same in this traffic management issue. The better cooperation, the better we feed each other's raw data, the better granularity we will have on events, which are of value for everybody. So how does the European mobility data space idea and fostering of the NAPs and so on fuel that discussion and help you with this? So
that's a great question, and I'm pretty sure that Laura, who has her digital hand up, wants to make a comment on that, because Laura, you were mentioning the the survey that you run with your cities, your customer cities, and this is one of the points that were identified. The exchange
Maybe.
of.
But and of course we were looking more from a technology perspective once the data is there and the willing to share. So in order to answer Joost, for sure, the direction with the national access points and similar is the right direction. Where we are trying to support is also when it comes to data coverage and data quality, because these are really two fundamental aspects in order to enable services. And we, SWARCO, believe in this open data ecosystem where we can all have access to data, and then the differentiation, of course, also from a business perspective, can be in the service offering that each one of us has based on that raw data. And the services then can be, of course, at different levels in functions of the capacities of each stakeholder, and go really from the descriptive part where you monitor the area to the predictive where you try to understand what will happen in the future, and last but not least to the prescriptive part where you know what could happen and you try to avoid it in order to create a resilient traffic management system. And just one comment I had for the capacity question that
I know you like
all.
that.
Yes, and just building on what Tamara was saying, that rather than capacity, we should really say it's about smart demand management. And I just wanted to remind the audience that actually also within the Traffic Management 2.0 platform, we had several task forces and initiatives looking at that, even some funded initiatives like the My Corridor project, where we were really looking at these two dimensions of the evolution of transport. On one hand, at the interactive part, and on the other side, looking at it not only on one transport mode, that is the car, but really in a cross-modal way. And at some point we were even calling this Traffic Management 2.1, and it was the cross-model interactive, because it was really about distributing the demand in a smart way across all transportation modes.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Laura. And there's a question that came in the Q&A functionality. It says, how are you going to overcome the well-known problem in transportation complexity? And Laura, allow me to ask our colleague Irfan if that is Irfan, can you hear us? Or you're muted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the question is, how are you going to overcome the well-known problem in transportation complexity? How are you actually doing this in London? Yeah.
So really, the only answer for us that's available is technology. We have a hugely complex, like any major city, hugely complex landscape. Maybe we have some interesting difficulties in London because it's a very old, very historic city. The network that we're tasked with managing is extremely complex, and it doesn't move, it doesn't change. We don't have that capability, so we have to apply technology to deal with the varying landscape. Complexity for us arrives in a huge variety of modes of different people wanting to move in different ways. So yes, we have the latest, the micromobility and everything. So we also have landing, maybe we have a test bed here in the UK, in London, for autonomous vehicles, and that's also arriving. So in order for us to deal with this complexity, we have to make sure our technology tools are architected openly so that we can deliver for our customers needing to move around on the network in many, many different ways. It's an extremely challenging and complex landscape, but really the key for us, and we have been in a situation where our tools weren't necessarily that open. The architecture was a little bit not as forward-looking as it may be. So we know to deliver for our customers that we have to look to the future and be able to embrace the short and medium term.
Okay, and Irfan, when you were discussing the predictive capability and modeling for this, and you mentioned the living labs in the streets of London, actually, are these able, or is your architecture able to take into account this complexity that is mentioned in the question, in the living labs? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. As I said, we're moving from a legacy set of systems which were quite closed and they were quite dated. When we are architecting and developing the new system, we're taking account of all the legacy needs, so all the old data feeds and everything still have to be applicable, because for an organization our size, we can't throw away everything tomorrow that we have spent millions and millions and millions. So we have to bring those data feeds through, continue to milk them as much as we can to get the best benefit out of them. But we also have to look to the current, so all the INRIX data, the bus data, everything else that we can bring in, and then the future. So, one or two elements of our architecture involve machine learning tools, which we're actively exploring. And then there'll be new data feeds coming through. We can see them on the horizon now. Yeah. So the living labs are completely architected to grow with the capability, so that we can use those feeds coming in.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you. The next question is, within Europe, are there any traffic management center systems that are close to be a future traffic management system, or the most modern state-of-the-art traffic management system? Do we have something like this in Europe, is the question. Shall I ask SWARCO? That's going to say yes, Laura.
Of course, we are going to say yes. Now, I just wanted to bring a couple of examples, also looking at the resilience of the systems and the capacity management. And I would like to bring to the attention one example out of Europe, but that will have a follow-up in Europe. And that we deployed recently the Doha traffic management systems in view of the World Cup last year. So that is really about being resilient and capacity management. And it was a success, the deployment. And now by using also new technologies like CCAM and so on, we are preparing for the final phase of the implementation of the Paris Traffic Management Center, also in view of the Olympic Games that are coming. So yes, I would say yes.
Yes, okay, perfect. The next question is that is coming from our audience says, small and medium and middle sizes cities are not well equipped with traffic sensors. How do you cope with that problem to obtain pertinent data to do prediction or, sorry, I cannot see the whole thing, to do prediction or simulation of traffic? This reduces the performance of the traffic strategy proposed by the traffic management platform. Who would like to answer that? I can repeat the question.
I can briefly answer and maybe leave then the space to somebody else if you wish.
Okay, Laura, let me go to Tamara and so that not all questions are answered from you, and then I'll come back to you. Tamara.
Yeah, I will synchronize with Laura because we with very similar background. Yes, so I agree with, and I know that the smaller cities are facing the challenge of the very sparse detector and loop sensors locations. However, there are with latest technologies. So there are two directions to deal with this one. There is to look up and the new investments for the small cities that they can make that are not too expensive. However, they enable you to collect the data in specific period of the time. For example, it could be like the application of the Bluetooth or the mobile phone data, right? That can be used to collect the travel information, etc. So not only looking at the loop detectors on the road, or it could be the installation of equipment like cameras for the road monitoring and positioning them at the optimal strategic positions. So we don't need for the AI algorithms or weather traffic simulation tools, they really need to capture the traffic flows on the very critical location and optimal locations on the road. Then using the different tools that we use in traffic simulation, the traffic flow theory, we can capture and connect those sensors and information from the sensors to make propagation of the traffic flow using some simulation models. So my advice would be like a way to invest in the strategic points where this data could be collected, and then deploying those in the traffic simulation models will enable the proper the traffic simulation, and then also the understanding on the connectivity on the road network.
Yeah. Thank you, Tamara. Unfortunately, we have one question, and I have to also take it. There are people in the audience that have their hands up, but it's better if you send it. It's better. The way to pose the question is to put it on the Q&A or send an email to the email address that is at the bottom of the slide. Let me take the last question that I see here and address it to Pedro and Jop, actually. The last question is, I see the elephant in the cupboard being complexity. When do you see complexity being debunked? Jop, sorry. Yeah, Jop, very short answer, and then Pedro, very short answer, so that we can close the webinar.
Yeah, so debunking complexity, I would not be too sure about. I would say do not be afraid to start small and simple. So a lot of times we lay the bar too high to make things very complex and strive for perfect before we start doing things. My experience in innovation is if you start small and have the first glance of an impact that you might have on a larger scale, this helps discussions to further detail, further improve, and then step by step towards quite complex solutions indeed.
Perfect. Thank you, Jop. And Pedro, very short answer. Is there a short answer? You're muted, actually.
Thank you. It happens to me too. Very, very short. So I think no, nothing to add. I think Jop really put it well. Complexity is not going to go away. It will continue to be complex. But I would say that even a long walk starts with the first step. So it's a question of finding the right direction, I would say.
Indeed, and we should not be afraid to fail, as Irfan said. Yeah. Let me, before Lisa closes, let me thank everyone for the very interesting questions that were posed, and of course, the fantastic panelists that we had today, experts in traffic management, discussing about the future, and more to come at the Congress. And Lisa, final word is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this lively discussion and for all the questions. Thanks to all the participants for being here with us. And also a thank you from my side to the panelists and to you, Johanna, for moderating the panel and for my team in the background who've worked hard to pull this together. See you all in Lisbon. But before, also, perhaps you want to note down the 11th of May, which is the last webinar, and that will be focusing on digitalization as well as freight and logistics. So that will be the 11th of May. So perhaps we speak then before we see each other in beautiful Lisbon. So thank you very much, and I'm closing the call. Bye for now.
Thank you.